Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. Happy 2022. We will get the date right. That's because I'm hosting the show.
You hope. You can still choke.
Oh, yeah, I could still choke, but, I don't have that reputation. But we'll start off with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
All right, so we have an Antonio Brown update.
Oh, boy.
If you didn't see what happened yesterday during the Jet game, all we saw was that he left the bench, ripped off his jersey, ran into the end zone, started waving at the crowd, and then waving his arm. He did the one finger, the two finger. He did the opposite of what Joe Namath did after winning. He
didn't flip the bird. Let's just say
no,
that.
No. One finger, the one finger. I would have said middle finger, Mike. Stay with me. But anyhow, he goes off into the locker room. Then Chris Myers later says there's a car waiting for him, a police car escort, and he flies out on his own. Okay, but we don't know what caused it. So now we finally do find out what caused it, and that is he claimed he had an ankle injury. Now this ankle injury started what you would call suspect ankle injury started when he had the fake vaccination card, right around the same time frame. So then yesterday he was like, I can't go back into the game because of my ankle. And they had him checked out, and Arian said, listen, we're telling you to get back in the game. If you can't get back in the game, then you're off the bench. And that's what he did. Now, afterwards, Sportrack put up his bonuses, and 2 bonuses were completely achievable. The one for 51 yards was completely achievable. He already had 36 yards in that game. He could have gotten some more in that game and the rest in the next game. And I think he needed 8 more catches. He wasn't going to get that probably, even the 2 games. And only 1 more touchdown. And each bonus represented $333,000. So whether this is a mental illness thing, whether this is a stupidity thing, some of it, all of it, his career is essentially over.
Yeah, I was going to say all of the above. But, Kev, I've never – I mean, with Antonio Brown, nothing is surprising. But I've never seen a guy self-destruct as much as he has.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. We've seen this act before. Before I left USA Today, one of my last football stories was about Antonio Brown. I talked to one of his professors back from his days at Central, and tried to get a handle on the guy, and he just had nothing but praise for the guy. Because of the bizarre nature of his behavior, I tend to believe that there's got to be some mental issues here that probably should be addressed by a professional. He clearly needs to talk to somebody and get this kind of squared away. But he's done this to himself. There's no doubt about it. That's not how you win friends and influence people, by his actions yesterday. So very, very bizarre, and certainly, probably usurped a lot of the big games in terms of what everybody was talking about yesterday in the NFL.
Now, one last thing. While talking about what happened in this game, I did put my other top 4 bizarre moments in sports that I have viewed in my lifetime. This one with Antonio Brown, I put number 5. I'll give you one other that's in my top 4. It's on Sportsology. And that was in Game 6 of the 86 World Series. All of a sudden, Bobby Ojeda's on the mound, Bill Buckner's up, and here's this guy hang gliding right into the middle of Shea Stadium, a full stadium. And Ojeda just kind of looks at him like, all right. The guy gets off the hang glider, the police come right out, and they escort him off.
Russ, I was going to bring up the Riddick Bowe Holyfield, the guy and the guy with the glider that flew.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was very similar because I was watching that fight. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And they're beating up on this guy, and he's got this propeller thing.
For the Mets thing, they called him Fan Man. That was his gimmick, and it looked like Evel Knievel kind of dress. But one of mine is also on the list is a Michigan-based bizarre moment. You could probably get that one.
Was it the Pistons?
No, college.
Oh, college.
Is it the Michigan play the Michigan flip? Oh! You mean
the timeout? Yeah, the time. I mean, he doesn't have any timeouts, right? Yeah,
timeout when he didn't have a timeout, and he traveled before that. He traveled. He didn't even bounce the ball. He traveled. The announcers call it traveling. They don't call it. And then he gets the ball up the court, and then when he gets in a jam, he calls timeout, and he doesn't have any time.
Well, I'll give you the hockey one.
Yes,
I can't remember who they were playing, but it was at the Boston Garden, and a fan jumped over the glass. I think they were playing Quebec, and I can't remember whether it was the referee or one of the players that knocked the guy down, because the guy just jumped over the short glass, like right at the corner, like in the Bruins zone, right where before the glass goes up real high behind the net. I mean, it was just like, what the hell is going on? And you don't see that, and of course the Falcone guy in Philadelphia who fell into the penalty box with Ty Domi. That's up there.
Max Domi still talks about that once in a while.
Yeah. So just one thing with the when it comes to football, there's a week left, so we don't know what the playoff matchups are going to be, but as of right now, the Bills would play the Patriots again. Third time. It's like, now, unless there's sort of another act of God and there's 60-mile-an-hour winds, I don't think that New England is going to be running all but 3 times. So, but I don't put anything past, because, believe me, Bill Belichick and Buffalo, there is, everybody's got like that. It's like, okay, he's going to come up with something to stop us. We know it's Belichick.
Yeah, there's Belichick. Yeah, speaking of football, I watched the Rose Bowl. Boy, was that an entertaining game.
I heard it was. I didn't watch it.
Yeah, it was really incredible. I mean, basically Utah jumps out to a 21-7 lead, then a 28-14 lead, and they're scoring left and right. And then Ohio State scores on a long pass, and then Utah runs the kickoff back, and then Buckeyes score again on a long pass. Like, it was 30. Go ahead.
I didn't see the game, Kev, but what I was going to say is I was stunned that Utah scored 45 points on Ohio State.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was just an entertaining football game, and to be honest with you, I think Utah would have won that game had their quarterback not been injured. They ended up having to go with the second string, and the coach really didn't have much confidence in him to throw the ball, so they had to switch to running. And I don't even remember the name of the quarterback from Utah. I really didn't know him, but he had an exceptional game, and when he wasn't throwing the ball all over the field, he was running, and it was just highly entertaining. I just sometimes where you don't really have an emotional investment in the game, and you turn it on, next thing you know, you get caught up with it. And I just loved the scoring. I just kept rooting for the team to score because they were doing it so quickly.
It's like an arena football game.
Yeah, that's what it was.
All right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, January 3rd, 2022.
That didn't sound good. That was some cheating involved. I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, HockeyBuzz.
That's called acting, Russ. And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with some not late-breaking news, but fairly common news when it comes to the NHL and what's going on, over the last month or so. Austin Matthews, who was named the NHL First Star of the Month over the weekend for December, playing only 7 games. He scored 10 goals, led the league in December. But today he did not practice in Toronto, and I was just on the conference call with Sheldon Keefe, and he indicated that he has tested positive on the rapid test. They will confirm it with a PCR test tomorrow. He's asymptomatic, so that means a minimum of 5 days. But, Kev, the Leafs had 15 positives, so the other 8 are going to be vulnerable because of Omicron and it being as transmissible as it is. But this is just, this is the news. This is what we're going to be going through the next month or so.
Yeah, and it's good that we've changed it to now it's not 10 automatic now. It's 5 if you're asymptomatic, and that's probably a good thing. And it could still possibly be a false positive that happened to the Red Wings. Larkin tested positive. He had to stay in Dallas. The team went to Vegas, and then lo and behold, the next day he was negative. That could be the case here. We don't know, but as you said, this is just going to be the way of the world now. And I keep warning people of this. We've had 2 players test positive or have COVID twice. We're going to see more of those. So just because they have it now, the antibodies. I just saw something on this morning. The antibodies in some people don't last any longer than a couple of months.
Well, remember, Matthews had the original strain, and that was what caused a bunch of hubbub because it was revealed when COVID was not being revealed. This is back in, I think, June or July of 2020. So this is number 2 for him, but obviously it's Omicron. It's a different variant. So
right.
That's going to be the reality here. I mean, whatever next is next, whatever new strain, everybody else is going to be vulnerable. So all we can hope for is as it metamorphosizes, it gets weaker and weaker as it goes on. And, then I guess we would hopefully start treating it like the common cold. But right now it can't be treated like the common cold because the death rates are so high. So
yeah, it's going to be a factor this entire month for the NHL.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bumpy month for them.
And as Tony Soprano in the chat is mentioning, it's heading toward lockdown in Ontario right now. And Kev, I don't know if we've heard anything more regarding, some of the requests of the Canadian teams to move games out of Canada for January because, they may be playing these games in front of few or no fans.
Yeah, no. And I think the league is very happy to honor that request just because they want to create as much revenue as possible. They can't go through a third season of not having 82 games and having their revenue, slashed. The problem with that is, and it's something you've been talking about a lot, and it's coming to bear, is we're going to run out of time in order to get all those games back, and now that's going to push us into the summer, and then we're going to have a short off season.
Yeah. Mike doesn't think that's going to happen. It's me that thinks that's going to happen. Mike thinks the season will end mostly on time, and I don't think that's going to happen.
To me, it comes down to, and people are who are talking with me about this around the league have warned me not to think in terms of what we normally do and think of what's possible.
Right.
And now, when you're saying that, what they're saying is we could play 4 games in 5. We just choose not to.
Right.
Those kinds of issues. So it's going to be interesting to see. We're throwing kind of new ideas out there, and who knows the way we're looking.
I mean, for example, I'll use the Leafs as an example. They have after they play Edmonton on Wednesday, they have a 4-game road trip, which was supposed to be a 5-game road trip, but Montreal's was postponed because of no fans. The next home game is the 17th of January against New Jersey. Now, if the Prudential Center in Newark is available, that game is that day is already reserved in terms of it being played because New Jersey is supposed to be in Toronto, but they could move that game to Newark. So it's Toronto and New Jersey playing, and then they just play the next game that was supposed to be in New Jersey in Toronto. Like those things are going to happen. Plus, when you have, and we've seen this, when a team visits the New York area, usually they'll play 3 games in 5 nights, maybe 3 games in 4 nights. But if there's no travel there, they could conceivably, Kev, play 3 games in 3 nights. If they could.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, I know the Players Association would have something to say about that, but these are strange times, and I think it's far more important that we get a full season in terms of the revenue for all the players, everything, than to stick with the conventional way we do things. I mean, these are strange times, and I think we're going to have to adjust accordingly. And
I just have a feeling the season's gonna run long.
Well, I mean, and you know, Thomas in the chat is talking about something that is not going to happen. Now, maybe Canada closes the border right now, but they haven't as of yet. And the reason that they won't close the border is probably won't close the border is because Omicron is everywhere. There's no point to closing the border. It's in the U.S., it's in Canada, it's rampant all over. So I don't see the purpose in that. And the other thing is Canadian teams playing in the U.S. Well, not their home games. They'll play their road games, or they'll move games and play games later on in Canada. But no, the amount of lost revenue if Canadian teams have to pick up stakes and play. Like if, say, the Leafs would have to play in Buffalo. Okay, who in Buffalo is going to go see a Leaf if the Canadian fans can't come over the border to see them? So that would be tons of lost revenue. So I don't think that's going to happen either.
Well, I think you would. They can count on you.
Well, if they gave me media credentials. But
yeah, well, I mean, it depends on where you played them. Like if you could play Montreal games in Florida, and I think you'd do pretty well.
You would do well.
You know, if you played Calgary games in Arizona, I think you'd do pretty well.
Lots of snowbirds, lots
of snowbirds, and I've run into plenty of people from Alberta up in Arizona. I think you'd think you'd have to be creative about it, but there are Toronto fans everywhere. So,
oh, sure. I'm just saying, it's like, you know, in terms of revenue. First of all, you're not going to be able to replace the revenue that they get in Toronto, in Buffalo, especially when you're paying $370, the equivalent of $375 for a platinum at the Bank Arena. It's just not going to happen. I mean, there'll be fans there because they would actually see a good team. But anyway.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say $375 for a beer. And
another game just got postponed.
What's that?
Another game just got postponed. The Senators at the Seattle Kraken, January 6th, postponed.
Okay. Well, the Senators had a mini outbreak. They didn't have Nick Paul and Josh Norris and a couple other players against Toronto on Saturday. So maybe that's because or maybe it's Seattle. Who knows? But yeah, you're going to see this. You're going to see a lot of this. But I continue to say, you know, at most, Russ, and I'm not making this as a caveat, at most a week that they might push the games for. They want to end the playoffs by the end of June. They want to have the draft in early July. I don't know if that'll get affected, but I just had a feeling the season could run long. I know there's going to be more of these postponements. Now, this one is interesting because now the Senators' next game is in Vancouver. So it does make me think that they want to keep them in Canada, and maybe they can't cross because of what their situation is. Well, I mean, that's the weird thing, because the Leafs had 3 games at home at the beginning of January. They didn't postpone Ottawa, Toronto, or Edmonton, Toronto, because that was inside the 2 Canadian teams. They did postpone Carolina and Toronto. I know, because I was supposed to cover that game, and that would mean Carolina crossing the border. The testing in the U.S. is more readily available in Canada. That we know before the pause, there was some issues regarding getting testing in Canada for U.S. teams. So that might be the factor there. So let's talk about the Winter Classic. It was on TNT. The St. Louis Blues and the Minnesota Wild. It was at the same time that Ottawa and Toronto was, so I didn't get to see a lot of it, Kev. But from what I saw of the TNT broadcast, it looked very similar in terms of camera angles and quality. That I didn't think there was much of a drop off, and the game was fairly entertaining.
Yeah, it was. I thought when it got out of hand, it was 6-2 at one point. I think. I thought, I think they probably lost some viewers from a national perspective. But what people look for when they watch those games is something out of the ordinary with the weather, and they got it because it was just colder than all get out. And I think that kept people in. People wanted to see how players would react to the adverse conditions, and I think that probably kept a few more viewers than you would normally get. But, those are still important events for the NHL, and I don't see them drying up for a very long time, just because there's such huge events in the cities that are hosting them. And I'm sure that was the case in Minnesota, where hockey is king and outdoor hockey is celebrated as well.
I thought, from a game perspective, it was really good. Kev, what we didn't like was with the panel, when they had a chance to interview Gary Bettman, it was like ridiculous, remedial. There was nothing that we learned. And I'm not sure Gary gave his usual like 15, 20 minutes that he normally would give at a Winter Classic to like the media, right? So normally we hope to learn a few things about the league, something from Gary Bettman. We don't even know when the next Winter Classic is. They didn't even ask that.
Yeah,
like, that's how bad it was.
And they didn't ask the question that we were just talking about in terms of rescheduled games. You would think that would be like the first question. I mean, I'm not trying to, like I said this before, I'm not trying to attack the guys who were on the panel, but most of them were former players, and they're not reporters. And reporters, or somebody like Ron McLean, who always holds Gary Bettman's feet to the fire, they would ask the important questions. A LeBrun or a Friedman or a Chris Johnston would ask him the questions that are upmost on the minds of the fans right now, and those questions really didn't get asked.
Yeah, not that they would have had answers anyway. I don't think the league knows exactly what they're going to do with the rescheduling of games yet. I think they're waiting to see how many games they're going to have to cancel in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean,
they could have said something like, "Hey, we have a plan." They could have said a little bit of light.
It should have been asked. There's no doubt. Yeah, it should have been asked. I'm just saying, I'm not sure Bettman would have given much of an answer at this point, anyway. So
now, go ahead, Russ. Did you have something?
I said that's fair. That's it.
Now, I found this humorous. I found it really humorous. Well, listening to Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts intermission report on Saturday, talking about how the inventive ways of how many players who still wanted to go to the Olympics were exploring. Like, for example, they were asking, I guess, the PA if they could retire or terminate their contract to go to the Olympics and then come back and re-sign a contract with the same team. I mean, okay, it's lost on me. And, I'm not an athlete. I'm just somebody who's been a fan, and now I'm a reporter. I don't get the, just this unbelievable desire to like leave your job to go to something like the Olympics. I don't get it. I mean, a writer should understand most of all, because, and I tell this to people all the time, you get into this business because you want people to read what you write. Like, you don't write for yourself. You're writing for people. You hope people will read it. When I write during the regular season of the NHL, this is not football. So, you weren't getting, 300 or 200 or 400,000 like you might get in the NFL. You're getting 50,000 or 40,000 or whatever. You go to the Olympics, you might get 500,000 read your story. Players understand that. It's the same thing for them. You play hockey. You want people to watch you. You're in the entertainment business. You get that. You want the adulation of the crowd. You want to be excited about it. You're representing your country. The Stanley Cup is great. That's your goal, your mission in your life. But the Olympics is much bigger. They understand that. They get it. They've been there. A lot of guys have passed that along. Like, man, I went to the Olympics and everything was completely different after that. I mean, ask some of the guys that were in 2010 how their lives changed after that. They get it. They understand it. These are smart guys.
I mean, I interviewed Ryan Kessler on the day between the U.S. and Canada game. And, what he was telling me, it meant a ton to him. It's hardwired, Mike. It's hardwired. Like, you get your pizza before the Bills game. What if that pizza place you go to was all of a sudden closed? You went to go get it, and all of a sudden they were just inexplicably closed. What would you do?
Russ, there are other pizza places.
It's like, do you want, if you're an artist, do you want your painting hanging in the Louvre or just in New York?
Yeah.
I mean, New York is great. But hanging in the Louvre is much better, and I think players get that, and I'm actually surprised you don't get that. So
I get it, but when the league when it says you can't go, then just give it up. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an interesting story, and I'm sure players ask that, but we've all been in those positions where you just, frustrated by what happened, so you start throwing out things. But would they have really gone through with that? I find that hard to believe that someone would have given up a contract and having it null and void and come back. I mean, they may have asked about it, but I doubt whether anybody was all that serious about it.
Now, the interesting thing, Russ, is that there was talk about players on AHL contracts being allowed to go. Mm-hmm. I know that was it Cody Goluboff, who played for Canada in 2018, and and there's a number of like veteran guys.
Yeah, Kevin gave us a number. What'd you say, Kev? For AHL players, like 5 or 6?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be 4 college guys, 6 or 8 AHL guys, some people in Europe, or 4 or 6, that kind of thing. It's going to be a mishmash. It'll be like a quilt of players from around the world.
Right, and one of the names that I think, I'm not sure if it was Jeff Merrick or Friedman mentioned, was Josh Hosang. And that would be he's having a really good year with the Marlies right now, and that would be a platform, Russ, that if he all of a sudden lit it up for Canada at the Olympics, I mean, he might have a couple teams knocking on his door for an NHL contract. So it is
that happened for him, actually.
Yeah, I would doubt a team would turn down a guy especially if he was unless he's a major prospect that you were counting on to come up. Why wouldn't you let any of these veterans go? A guy like him or any of the, I guess they could, but I think for the most part they'll get who they want out of the AHL and Europe, and maybe some colleges will turn them down, but they seem to kind of have I have the sense they already know who they wanted. So
now, Eric Duhatschek wrote in the Athletic regarding some of the teams that have general manager openings and how they're sort of putting out feelers regarding potential candidates. Obviously, the one that's the most interesting of the 4 teams is the Montreal Canadiens, because there's always that francophone aspect when it comes to them. It's going to have to be somebody who's French speaking. The thing is, I didn't know Roberto Luongo was bilingual. He's from Montreal.
I didn't either.
He's from Montreal, and his name has been mentioned along with Briere, along with a number of names that we've heard over the last month or so. But Kev, I don't know, like in terms of the time frame, since they have Gorton there, and he's an experienced general manager. They could wait until the end of the season to get the permission of another team if that team is preventing them from getting a guy.
Yeah, but don't you have the sense that Jim Rutherford and Gordon kind of want to delay it anyway because they kind of want to just be the guy for this time period. But if you're going to hire a guy like Luongo who hasn't been in a managerial position ever before.
Except for Canada at the World Championships, I think he was in management for that last year or something.
He wasn't the general manager. I guess I misspoke. What I'm talking about, no, he hasn't been a GM yet.
Right.
He hasn't to run anything. Like this is the perfect situation if you're going to do that. Hire someone who hasn't been a GM before. This is the time to do it because you have a GM who's his boss. Right. And who actually did a pretty good job of putting together a nice Rangers team. That makes some sense to me. Have Luongo, who I think would be accepted in Montreal. I think they'd be excited by that. So that doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility to me.
Now, Briere's name has been mentioned. A couple others. I mean, but to the the point I was making is, there really isn't any rush unless they just will not accept Gorton acting as a pseudo general manager because he's not French Canadian.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any rush either. Although, I like who are they waiting for? I mean, why? Who's out there that you think might be fired that you might get? I
mean, maybe Matthew Darsh, who is with Tampa Bay. Maybe Tampa Bay won't give permission to a team in their own division. I don't know. That maybe it's something like that. I would think that most general managers in this league believe that they shouldn't hold somebody who's an assistant general manager back from being a general manager.
Yeah,
there's some guys that have left in season to get a promotion. It's happened.
Yeah. Now, Russ, I know that Vancouver, the names that are popping up, one name is Scott Mellenby, who was an assistant in Montreal. Another one was Patrick Alvin, who was an assistant under Rutherford in Pittsburgh. So, there are names out there. But again, like Kevin said, Rutherford has a handle on being a general manager, has all the contacts. And maybe if he, right now he doesn't need to do any big work because they're hot. They're red hot. So,
yeah, that one's going to take a while. I don't think there's any rush by Rutherford. I could see it going through the draft and not have to.
Yeah,
I really could. I just could see it just moving through.
I'm with you on that. Jim Rutherford. I kind of wonder, is this the way he wanted it set up, or did he just go along with this?
Right.
Because maybe that's how they wanted it set up. I mean, he's in his 70s. They probably wanted someone there that was going to be his heir apparent, and they just probably said, if we're going to hire you, this is what we want to do. We want to have you be the director of hockey operations. You bring a guy that you're molding to be your guy, because, how long is he going to do it? Is he going to do, 5 years, 6 years, 2 years?
Nah, I don't think it'll go beyond 5 years. No way.
Well, that's what I mean. So, that's probably a good setup. And so I'm sure Jim's not in any hurry to do it. And I'm sure he's still trying to kind of analyze, somebody has to go there. I think we all agree.
Yes.
And he's probably trying to reach a conclusion on who that should be. So,
and the other two general manager positions are Chicago and Anaheim. And I think it was Elliot Friedman who made the point that, Anaheim has a lot of decisions that need to be made before the deadline. Now, if they stay in contention, then they're not trading any of the guys who are UFAs. They're not going to trade Manson or Raquel or, Getzlaf is not going anywhere.
You never say never, because would they trade a player for player if they feel like it makes their team better? Yeah, they still might.
Well, they might. What I'm saying, Russ, is that if they're in the mix, they're less likely to trade Lindholm, Manson, or Raquel.
Yeah, they're not going to trade them all, but they still could trade one or two of them.
Sure.
If they feel like that trade makes them even more of a contender at that time, and it does solve another problem too.
But do you want an interim general manager who replaced Bob Murray to make those decisions? I mean, they do have guys like Dave Nonis in the organization who is a former.
Solomon's a great guy, so if nothing else, I think he understands the, how to get that done. I don't think there's a problem with that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he's never really made those trades. I mean, I like him. He's, he was an agent. I knew him pretty well. He's a very smart guy, but he's not. There's an art, as we all know, to making trades, and he's never made a trade. So
it doesn't mean he can't, right?
It does not mean he can't. But there's.
But it's risky for somebody who doesn't have the experience to be put
in
charge.
He's got a different kind of experience. That's the thing. He could look at it from a financial standpoint too, and then kind of look around. Like he might have a little bit of an edge that way. He may not have the contacts, but look, he might be able to trade with some other guys that he knows. I mean, I
don't think that's the issue. The cap is part of it, but it's just. How you approach it. Do you send out a memo saying this guy is available? Do you call up and is it sleight of hand? Do you talk about one guy when you really want another guy? I mean, those kind of things. Like when you talk to GMs, they don't even like to discuss that because there is an art to it, and they all understand that. And I just think there is.
Let me ask you this, Kev. So if the Kings are out of it, would the Kings trade with the Ducks? They might.
Yeah, I mean,
and they've got players to trade.
The Devils traded with the Islanders, so anything's possible.
He knows the Kings, right? So that would be an easy on.
Well, yeah, I mean, he could certainly talk to Rob Blake, and like I'm sure he knows the guys. Like that's not the point, but I mean, I just think there is kind of it's why some guys, make, and it isn't always about experience. Like Ken Holland, I don't see him as a major trader. Like he's always been a guy that acquired veteran players for draft picks and prospects and such, but he, player for player trade, that's kind of Jim Rutherford or, other people of that ilk. David Poyle makes those kind of trades.
Well, talking about trades and talking about, the potential of a team. I'm just doing this on the fly here because Russ mentioned the Kings. Right now, they're borderline in terms of whether they're going to be in the mix for a playoff spot. I mean, I had hopes for them, but it's been sort of up and down with them this year. Losing Doughty for almost 2 months really hurt them. But they have a bunch of unrestricted free agents, so potential rentals in Edler and Mata and Dustin Brown and Athanasiou. But the interesting one, Kev, with the number of teams out there that need goaltenders is Jonathan Quick, because Jonathan Quick has been playing most of their games. It hasn't been Cal Peterson, because Peterson has played a significant chunk over the last 2 seasons. They're playing Quick a lot, and I almost get the feeling like they're playing Quick a lot to prove to other teams that he's still a good goaltender, that he could help them make a run.
Yeah, and there was a period when he was really hot that people were kind of talking about him, and that was followed by a period where he wasn't hot. I think he's an interesting guy because he's been there, done that, and he's got the experience, the resume, and I think would be a nice guy to add to your lineup if you're unsure of your goaltending. Not everybody, there are 3 teams probably looking at goaltenders and looking at Marc-Andre Fleury, and all 3 teams can't have Marc-Andre Fleury. So the consolation prize, could be someone like Quick.
Now, Russ, the complicating factor is Quick has another year. He's got another year at $5.8 million, but I'm looking at his stats right now: 10-7-4. 923 save percentage, 2.37 goals against. That's a lot better than I think we thought he was going to be.
No, listen, he played great against the Flyers. He made 1 save where he was looking in a complete opposite direction, but because he's always so good positioning wise and has that leg extension, he still sealed off the post and stopped the shot from going in, and he didn't even see the shot. So this is how Jonathan Quick can still play. The worry is you get him, and then all of a sudden he gets that one injury that keeps him out like for 2 weeks and you got nothing. But he's gotten through the season, so I do think if the Kings ate some salary, he could be traded.
Yeah. Looking at some of the games last night, and I know, Russ, when we were talking and I read off some of the scores, and I said Penguins 8, Sharks 5. You talked about the Penguins, and I know that at the beginning of the year you were bullish on them when we were all like looking at the fact that Crosby and Malkin were going to be out for how long, and the goaltending that they have. Well, they're 18-8-5, and in this game, Evan Rodriguez scores a hat trick and Brian Russ scores a hat trick.
Brian Russ is just back too.
Now, he's only got 5 goals. He scores a hat trick. I'm just, and Leaf fans are criticizing Kyle Dubas for not qualifying Evan Rodriguez. The Evan Rodriguez of right now and the Evan Rodriguez of 2 years ago are 2 completely different players, because this guy is, he didn't play like this in Buffalo.
But isn't the GM's job to recognize that Evan Rodriguez is going to be this Evan Rodriguez?
Right. Well, I mean, he didn't have a lot of time in the NHL when the Leafs had him, so you had to grant him time no matter what. He wasn't going to be an instant hit. And so, Kevin does make a good point. But what I did want to point out, Mike, and then you can go, is those 8 goals were all scored by NCAA talent. And this is something the Penguins have actually mastered, bringing in the former college free agents, the really good college players that they drafted, like Rust, like Gensel, that don't go first round, don't even go second round sometimes. Those guys, and it works for them. And they get the work ethic out of those guys. They get forechecking out of those guys. And that's what I saw in camp. I saw a team that was fast, that could forecheck. And I figured, you know what? They could wait until their superstars come back and compete. And that's why I was bullish on them, just because of the effort that I saw in a camp, because they were doing way more than I've seen a lot of teams do in camps.
And Malkin, I'm just looking right now because I knew that he was skating, but I don't believe he's back yet.
No, he said 2 days ago, he said it would be a week to 10 days. He's wearing I forget now, is it yellow or red jersey?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Each team has a different one. With Toronto, it's gray.
It's gray. Okay. Well, anyway, he's wearing the no contact jersey. Right. But he was kidding around with the media. Yeah, was having a good time.
He walked in the media room one day and had some fun with them, which I think is cool.
So, yeah. He's sort of implied that the Penguins won't have to break the bank to re-sign him too, which is I don't think it was at this interview, but I've seen some suggestion that he's kind of said that, which will really be interesting. So
I still think the MVP of the Penguins are Burke and Hextall for not doing anything about their goaltending. They didn't do a thing.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is Ron Hextall is MVP for being Ron Hextall.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, because that's who he is.
Without slashing anybody with his goal stick.
No, yeah. I mean, he's a patient guy.
He's a patient guy.
I have said this, that I thought that the meshing of those two personalities was absolutely perfect, because you have the ultra aggressive Brian Burke, and you have the very patient and draft mindful Ron Hextall. And Ron Hextall needed a little bit of Brian Burke. And Brian Burke needs a little bit of Ron Hextall. And I think the combination of those two has been a good managerial fit. And a lot of things have gone right for Pittsburgh this year. The big thing was in goal. Where the goalie we saw, you talk about Rodriguez, but the goalie we saw in the postseason is not the goalie we've seen in this regular season either.
Yeah, Jari has been.
Jari's been terrific. Yeah. So and I just saw some statistics on 5-on-5 save percentage, and Jari is right up there in that regard.
Yeah, a 932 save percentage, 15-5-4 record, 1.93 goals against. I think the only goalie who has a better save percentage that's played that many games is Jack Campbell.
Yeah, I think so.
We should talk about it. For the last couple of years, the Penguins have revamped their defense, and every year people throw dirt on various players, Crystal Tang or whatever, and their defense has gotten to be pretty good. It's reliable.
Yeah, I don't think they throw dirt on Chris Letang. He's one of the more popular.
No, there's a lot of people that keep saying
there may be, but he's one of the more popular.
Russ,
I know. I'm not saying in that market. I'm saying like nationally, it's like Chris Letang's getting on.
Okay.
They've been throwing bags of topsoil on Mike Matheson ever since the trade.
Yeah,
that's true. Even he's gotten a little better. I give him that.
Yeah, there's a team I wanted to talk about.
Yep.
Just because I heard this incredible statistic on the game when I was watching it yesterday, the afternoon game. And I looked it up to make sure this was accurate. I went to the Bruins notes, and they keep track of it. And sure enough, this is true. In the last decade, the last 10 seasons, when the Boston Bruins get a 2-goal lead, the very hard to maintain 2-goal lead, they have lost just 20 games in 10 seasons when they've had a 2-goal lead. 10 games in regulation, I should say. 10 games in regulation. That is a remarkable statistics, and it gets better. If they get a 3-goal lead, because now we hear that discussed all the time. We just saw last night the San Jose Sharks were down 6-2 and got 3 goals in the opening 4 minutes. Now the 3-goal lead, when the Bruins get that in 10 seasons, 2 losses. 2 losses. Now, I bring that up just because, when I was watching the Red Wings play that team, and, obviously in my other job, I cover the Red Wings as a beat writer. I think the Bruins is the type of team that the Red Wings really want to emulate, because
Sure.
Blashill talks all the time about being able to hold the lead, and the Red Wings have had trouble doing that. And I don't think there's too many teams better at it than the Boston Bruins.
Yeah,
What I would like to know, though, is how successful are they doing that without Krug and Chara?
Well, I mean, it has to be pretty good because they've only lost 20-2, and I mean, are you saying was it 4?
Maybe they've had a few lately where they didn't have even.
Well, they didn't have a few in the 3-goal variety because they only have 2 for 10 years. So maybe they have 1 in the last 2 years. But
I mean, I honestly don't think that their defense. I mean, it's not at the level of when they had Boychuk and Chara.
No.
But it's still with McAvoy and Carlo. It's still solid.
Yeah, but I think it's more than that. I think it's a culture. It's it's just part of it.
Bergeron and Marchand are good defensively. They are.
But just to give you an idea, over that 10 years, the 2-goal lead, that's 394 games, just in case you were wondering. 394 games.
I don't know why, but I sort of have a phobia about 3-goal leads involving the Bruins. I don't know what that.
Yeah.
But so. Russ, just talking about prospects here. The one thing I want to ask you about Logan Cooley in a minute, but I heard something about Shane Wright, and we know that we hate when players are compared to existing players. Like, oh, this guy is going to be like Wayne Gretzky. It's like it's unfair. But the comparison that I heard regarding Shane Wright was Patrice Bergeron. And you know what? No. I don't. If that's a compare, like as a negative, like a number 1 overall pick, who's going to be like, if he's like Patrice Bergeron, sign me up.
Yeah, nobody's like Patrice Bergeron. That's the problem. Nobody is. I think he's really good, anyway. I don't think Shane Wright will ever be as good defensively as Patrice Bergeron. I don't think he'll be as good on faceoffs as Patrice Bergeron. There are offensive plays that he makes that Patrice Bergeron can make, and vice versa. And Wright might be able to make a few that Bergeron can't make. Right. But in the end, he's not Patrice Bergeron. He's just not. He's really good, though, and he's going to be a hell of an NHLer. But, yeah, that's again, it's just too much.
Now, the one thing I will say about comparisons is this. We used to not make them. It was an NHL tradition. Everybody would talk about that, and nobody paid attention to our draft. And then someone at the NHL office caught on, the draft should be bigger. We should get people excited about it. And suddenly I started seeing them everywhere. And, when you're trying to ignite a fan base, people just need to know what kind of style they are. Like, and maybe they do think he's going to be the guy, but I think it really helps. And I think the interest in the NHL draft has grown exponentially in the last 5 or 6 years. And a lot of it is the fact that we're talking about players in ways.
I mean, look, I'll put it this way. I don't think he'd be better than Bergeron, but he'll be better than Krejci. And Krejci was a hell of a player.
Yeah,
he'll be an all-star player. Like, there's no question about it. So,
you're probably bang on because you know your stuff. But I'm just saying, I don't have any problem as a journalist, having comparisons. Even though I acknowledge that Mike is right as well. It is unfair sometimes to the players.
And just talking about,
they said, just to give an example, for the draft for Rick Nash, they were saying Mario Lemieux. Now, Rick Nash was a hell of a player. Was he Mario Lemieux? He wasn't close.
He was in the same position as Mario Lemieux. So
I know, but this is what they were saying, though, as a comparison.
But what I was saying,
I never heard that. So
Bobby Orr for Jay Bouwmeester. How did that work out?
Christ! I mean, this is just asinine.
There was Bobby Orr for Jay Bouwmeester.
I mean, it's just come on.
I covered the league pretty closely, and I never heard Jay Bouwmeester compared to Bobby Orr. I'm sorry, Russ.
Okay. They were both defensemen. That's where the comparison
I think I would have heard it if that was a serious comparison by somebody that mattered. I'm pretty sure I would have heard
it. I'm seeing it in 4 articles from back then. They compared his skating to Bobby Orr. So there you go.
Skating.
Oh, well, okay.
His skating wasn't Bobby Orr.
Great.
Yeah,
Eric
Hayden
can skate like Bobby Orr.
Oh, maybe it wasn't his whole game as Bobby Orr, but even his skating's not Bobby Orr.
No, that's true. He's not. But
Now, the one thing that we have to track here in terms of, especially in terms of the Ontario Hockey League, is like we were just saying earlier in the show, Ontario basically shutting down. And apparently, you know, what they're talking about is like movie theaters and like any place where there's groups of people. We know that the NHL has basically some sort of special dispensation because they're the NHL, but the OHL, Russ, this could shut down the OHL for a month.
It could. And again, that would shorten their season because they want to have the Memorial Cup. I don't think they'd be able to make up the games. I just think that's
where is the Memorial Cup this year? Do you know?
I don't know.
I don't know. So you know, it's like I'm sorry to ask you on the fly, but
All right,
anyway. Well, tell us about. I'll look it up. Tell us about Logan Cooley.
Yeah, so Logan Cooley, I currently have him on my list in Sportsology, number 4. I have him at the 3rd best center. So Shane Wright, Matthew Savoy, Logan Cooley. He did score a point in the World Juniors, and Anthony had asked me, how much does the World Juniors make up of, you know, what I do for rankings? And in a normal year, it probably makes up 20%. But when you don't have a normal year, you have to make adjustments. Now, there is a benefit for me that I went to the U.S. camp because I got to see a lot of these guys scrimmaging and otherwise from the U.S. side. You know, nobody else that was in the World Juniors, but there's going to be a fair amount of U.S. players in there. So I feel confident in being able to tell with the U.S. players. Plus, I did see, you know, the NTDP at the Fall Classic too with the USHL. So I certainly have a good handle on that. And I'm going to have to watch a lot of video to make up the gap on the other. But Cooley is a 5'10" center, 180 pounds. He's fast. Like, he's got a really good acceleration. So even when sometimes you think you have him covered, he can make that step and either go to the net or make a great pass that's, you know, to somebody that's either going back door or to the right or the left hash. So that's something that he can do. But the really impressive thing about him, aside from his offense, and he's more than a point a game with the NTDP, is his faceoffs. And it showed even at the World Juniors just for that, you know, the one regulation game he played. And then I think I saw him in a prelim too, and he was doing really well with faceoffs. And again, we have to remember the NTDP does play against college teams, so they do get to test themselves against older, stronger players. And, you know, and that's an important factor too. So he's from Pittsburgh. He's proud of being from Pittsburgh, like Kevin had said. And we talked about the whole, you know, Crosby thing there. So there's going to be a lot of teams wanting to get Logan Cooley, but you have to be bad enough to get him. That's really going to be the issue.
Yeah, and I think it really helps his case that Zagreus has had such impact this season.
Yeah. And just to give, and I'll give this much of a comparison, just to play into Kevin's thing. I think he's better than what Alex Turcotte was in his draft here, as an example.
Yeah, has Alex been a disappointment, Russ?
He's getting close to that, but he's not there yet. But, you know, he's getting close to that. Like, again, I go back to that draft and I say, we all knew that Zegras could be up here.
Yeah.
We already knew that Turcotte was at a certain point and figured he would get a little bit more because he was already good defensively. He was good on faceoffs. He could score. He was very good in his own age group. And then something has happened to Turcotte where now he's still there, and Zegras did get up there.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder
overtaking him.
With Turcotte, I wonder if it's like the Joe Veleno situation in Detroit, where everybody knows Veleno is going to play in the league for a long time. He's a good, solid, dependable player, does everything pretty well, but nothing great. And I wonder if Turcotte's going to be that same kind of player where you'll eventually get in the league and play good defensively.
If I had to guess now, I think Veleno's going to be better. The reason I think Veleno's going to be better is because I think when he did stop scoring for that time, that's what dropped him in the draft. It was never about talent. Joe Veleno always had the talent. He always was fast. He always was a strong kid, but he knew, hey, I stopped shooting. I wasn't shooting enough. And he knew that cost him in the draft. But he also is now making up for it on the back end. So if Joe Veleno outscores Alex Turcotte, I'm not going to be shocked because he was always a scorer. So I just feel like that's just going to come back naturally anyhow.
Veleno's a bigger body too.
He has a bigger body, yeah.
Well, now the first thing now he is because he put 15 pounds on in the last season. The interesting thing about Veleno is, when he was in the draft, Russ just said the question is will he score? But here we are 3 years later, and the questions in Detroit are, will he score? He's a good, good player. You watch him, he skates well. He's a little grittier now because he's bigger. He's even said it's given him a lot more confidence, everything else.
What's funny, Kev? You look at a guy like that and you see it's all there, but you can't make it happen. I can't make it happen.
No.
And Detroit hopes they can make it happen. And that's the thing with prospects is, sometimes we see everything that's there and say, wow, if it just all gets put together, this guy could be a heck of a player. And sometimes it doesn't all get put together.
Well, he hasn't scored in there. They put him on the power play in today's practice, so they're going to give him a shot at playing Veleno. So they want him. They've tried to, when they sent him to Grand Rapids, they had him playing on the top line, but he just hasn't been able to. It hasn't come together for him.
I mean, is this something that LA is going to be kicking themselves in a couple years where they took Turcotte 5 after it went Hughes, Kakko, Doc, and Byram. And the next pick after Turcotte was Seider. And the pick after that was Dylan Cousins. And
they're picking themselves now, honestly. I mean, I don't see how you couldn't. Even if Turcotte turns out well, he's behind a lot of those players already. So they're kicking themselves now. But again, the Kings have gotten a lot right. Everybody gets them wrong,
Yeah, I think it's real easy to get fooled in the draft by really smart, mature players, guys that are good defensively, and you think, oh, they're such smart play. I mean, how many times do we hear that about Turcotte? Zegras is more dynamic. Yeah. He's more exciting, everything else, but boy,
loose with the puck, though. He's loose with the puck, and
So, but with Turcotte, he's just smart. Just such a smart player.
Yeah. So. All right. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, for Kevin Allen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.